Well, hey there. Welcome back to Return to Yehovah. Today I want to talk about, I guess I'll call this God is restoring his ways, but why? So last night was 4th of July, here in America at least, and while we were out watching a few fireworks and it was getting darker and darker, I was looking for the new moon to be up in the sky and begin the next month, which on the calendar I'm following is the 4th month of the year on the biblical calendar. And and I realize there's a lot of different I don't know how many. There's maybe 4 different versions, maybe 5, or variations of what people consider the biblical calendar. So I'm just using that as kind of a general term for, several of us are trying to get back to, among other things, God's way of following the calendar or marking out the year, because his feast days, which are greatly important in his scheme of things or in the plans of God, we need to be able to know where we are in a year and in a month to be able to celebrate the feasts that he's laid out in Leviticus chapter 23 and other places, of course. And, if you know anything about the feasts, there's prophetic significance. Not only did Yeshua fulfill, 4 of the spring feasts, at his first coming through different things. And there's plenty of teachings out there on the internet about that. And, so there's, volumes of information. I won't go into that today. But, it dawned on me, because see, I did a short video where I sighted the moon and posted that on YouTube, because there's a few people out there that, are also looking, or maybe a couple times I've had it where somebody's like, oh, we got busy and didn't go look or whatever. And so it was, a good little update for them. And one person commented, and they said basically something to the effect that Yehovah is restoring his calendar, which of course I totally agree with. And it was just cool, just to me, the idea that God is doing this. It's not a bunch of people that got together and decided to try to do something that they saw in the Bible or whatever, it's just not. But so I made a few notes. I'm just going to read them or use them as bullet points for my own train of thoughts or whatever. But and this probably will if you've watched some of my other videos, maybe it's going to sound like a broken record, but I don't consider myself a teacher or anything like that. I'm just I try to be an encourager, or maybe a little bit of an exhorter. But I guess in modern lingo, maybe I'm just a ranter, a YouTube ranter, if there is such a thing. But I can't help but ask, okay, if God is doing this, restoring his calendar, and we know, or at least hopefully you're aware now, that there's a lot of people out there that are getting back to the Torah, God's written commands given to Moses at Mount Sinai. And a lot of people have discovered those where they never even gave them a thought before, and me included. I never even thought they were relevant for me at all as a Christian. I just was never told that. I'm going to go ahead and turn the car off. It seems a little noisy. I don't know if that helps or not, but anyhow, so I was wondering to myself, okay, why in the world would God do this? Now think about this for a second. Okay, if we're truly in the end times or the last days, and a lot of us believe, or a lot of the church, I should say, that are at all prophetically minded, or that are aware of what the book of Revelation says, or a lot of like Matthew 24 and the end times passages, a lot of us are expecting wars and rumors of wars and all kinds of signs in the heavens and all kinds of, read the book of Revelation, and all kinds of things coming to this earth. There's all kinds of talk on the internet about America being destroyed, and a lot of people are saying that we are Babylon, and it's hard to argue that, and I don't try to at all, because, yeah, we're about as rotten as can be, but there's other candidates out there. Maybe just the whole world has gone so far away from God, multiple places could be called Babylon, but so if we know that judgment is coming on this earth, not only on America, but on the rest of the world and stuff, and we know that a beast is going to arise and a false prophet is going to arise, and they're going to be, subjugating all or most of the world's people that remain after all these devastations, and earthquakes, volcanoes, all those things. So anyhow, the devil, the Antichrist, I guess technically Antichrist is better. The devil inhabits him somehow. But him and the false prophet for sure are allowed to rule for 3.5 years, according to what Revelation says. And so they're going to be, just wreaking all kinds of hell on earth. And then at some point, Yeshua's going to come and destroy the enemies of God, and he will, be victorious in the end. But a lot of us think, okay, when he comes and defeats the enemy, then we all go to heaven, or however you have been, taught your theology or whatever. But a lot of people think then that's it, But as I was pondering this kind of stuff, I thought, and believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there do not believe in what I'm about to talk about next. But multiple places in the Old Testament, in the prophets, talk about a time where God is going to rule and reign on earth in some fashion from Jerusalem. Now, believers in Yeshua as the Messiah have no doubt that he is the one that will be coming down. He's going to fight against the enemies of God and defend the people that are living in the land of Israel, or God's people wherever they are. And then he is going to set up a kingdom on this earth, and he will rule and reign from Jerusalem. Now, I realize, if you're like-minded with me, this is, preaching to the choir. I get that. But on the off chance that maybe somebody stumbled across this video, the idea that if it's all going to just be destroyed and then a new heaven, a new earth come down, which is both things stated in the book of Revelation, but people seem to just gloss over the part of the Bible that talks about this millennial reign of Christ, or of the Messiah, where obviously it's millennial because it's 1,000 years. The Messiah is going to reign on earth, as I've been saying. And it talks about there will be a temple. Ezekiel, in his latter chapters, describe a temple. And he describes sacrifices and the Passover. And in Zechariah, the book, they talk about people of the earth that are under the rule of Messiah will need to come to Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot. So these feasts of God, all part of his calendar. So I'm trying to bring this around to make a little bit of sense. It's necessary, for God's people to know about his calendar, his feast days, the prophetic significance of a lot of them. And I'm not even sure we know all of the significance. But so, forget the idea that it's all going to just be totally destroyed and then God's going to redo it all. Yes, one day he's going to make a new heaven and a new earth, and that's going to be glorious. I can't even imagine, but it's going to be awesome, But until that happens, or before that happens, there's going to be a kingdom on earth that God, puts his king, his son, to rule from this earth, And, there's just, so much about it, and it's like, so to me, that is why God is returning his people to his Torah, to his commandments, and to the feast days, that he has laid out in his word. And of course, with all of that, you need to understand about the calendar. Now, I am not beating up anybody that has chosen to just go with the calendar that the rabbis established hundreds of years ago. It was meant to be an approximation, and from what I understand, the rabbis are planning that, or have said, I've heard this multiple times, so I'm not quoting any one guy, but the rabbis have basically said that they understand when Messiah returns, or, well, they don't say return, obviously. When Messiah comes, then we will get back to the ways of sighting the moon and the Aviv barley and all that. And a quick, little section. The first couple verses of Deuteronomy 16 includes all of that. And it includes the Passover, but you might see that. And, so today I don't want to go into the details about the barley being Aviv and all that. And unfortunately, as I've mentioned before, there's at least a couple different schools with different understandings of when is the barley Aviv, or if it's Aviv, when is it enough to begin the year? Or, another school might say, well, no, we can't begin the year yet. I'm not an expert on either one, and I'm just, like a lot of us, I'm just going with how I understand it right now, and I haven't seen enough to make me want to go to the other school, but I'm also not, the messenger of God to tell you have to do it my way or whatever. Either way, though, there will come a time when Messiah will come to earth after he defeats God's enemies and sets up his kingdom. Then we will all know this is how we're supposed to keep it. But I truly believe, now maybe the people that believe like I do, maybe, let's say there's 4 parts of what you have to believe. Maybe 2 of the parts that I follow will be correct, and the other 2 will be, totally wrong. And that's okay. I just, I would love to have truth, but, I also know that maybe I can't get it all right now, and I mean, there's different people have different opinions on when it's a Jubilee year or the sabbatical years, and a lot of different understandings on that either, or also, and I'm just not sure on those. But all I'm trying to make a point is, especially to people that maybe are new to this whole idea of the Torah, or, the law still being in effect or whatever. God is the one that started this whole thing. He is bringing people back. And what I've seen, now maybe there's somebody can contradict this, but of the people that I've seen, turning to the Torah, all the ones I know were already believers in Jesus Christ as the Messiah, as their Savior. Of course, a lot of us call him by, what we consider his Hebrew name, either Yeshua or Yehoshua, like Joshua, Yehoshua, some people say. And I'm not a sacred namer as far as you must say it this way or you're going to hell or whatever. That's not the thing. A lot of us say things in Hebrew, and, I'm sure, people that really understand Hebrew are going, no, that's not how you say it. But that's another thing for another day. So just for today, I wanted to point out, I believe, that the reason God is doing this with the, restoring the calendar and restoring his Torah and all that is because we're coming to a point in the history of man where we're going to need to know these things. And maybe he doesn't want to take, the first 20 years of the millennium to teach a bunch of us. But if there's hundreds or thousands of us in the world today, and if we all survive to come into that kingdom, then we'll be ahead of the game, and we can go, okay, I understand about the sighting of the moon. I mean, I've done that for several years, not from Jerusalem, but from Washington State, but I know what to look for. I know where to look. I mean, I know when it's a new moon and when it's not. And I mean, I may not get chosen to be one of the people in Jerusalem, but I'm just saying that it's preparing the way for us to get back to God's commandments when he finally sets up his kingdom for that 1,000-year reign. I was hoping to cut this short before 15 minutes, but missed out. So I'm going to go just a tiny bit more because I had a thought and I wanted to make sure I get that in there. Stand by just a second. I know. Part of the reason why I think it, hopefully, to me anyhow, I hope it doesn't take, another generation before God sets up that kingdom. And that's because in the history of God's people, whether it's the children of Israel that came out of Egypt, or once they got into the promised land and they were all on fire for God and they were keeping his ways, and Joshua was leading them and they were victorious. And then Joshua died, and it wasn't long after that, like a generation, and the people fell away from God. And then he'd have to raise up a deliverer to save them from the Philistines or whoever, and they'd be good for a while, and then they'd fall away again. And you can read it all through the history of Israel from Deuteronomy on, pretty much, or from Joshua on, So my point in saying all that is I'm hoping that God will, is doing this, and, because not that none of us, in this generation can say, we are so holy, we are so righteous, we deserve this, or whatever. And anybody that's truly honest, with their faith in God and their belief in Yeshua and all that, to be able to have God reveal, this Torah that has been his way since the days of Moses, obviously before that, but written down, in Moses' day. It's pretty amazing to think that he's doing that again now. And I don't think it's an accident. I think the timing is exactly what he wants. I would love to tell you that there are thousands of younger generation people that are just grabbing onto the Torah and eating it up and learning and studying, and that God's using them as mighty teachers and prophets. That would be awesome. But so far, I'm not seeing that. I mean, there are good teachers out there, younger than me, maybe 10, 15, 20 years younger, that God is just showing them some incredible stuff, and that's great. But will that carry on for another generation so that the same effect when whoever's alive at the time comes into the kingdom, there will still be people that are keeping God's commandments and following his calendar as best they understand. You know what I mean? And so is that a guarantee that we are super close to the end? I don't know. God hasn't told me that. It was just a thought that went through my head, and it does make me wonder, but I don't know. I guess we will see. But if you haven't already looked into the Torah and keeping God's commandments, before you come up with the same old arguments from Christianity that Paul says it's done away, so we have to get rid of it and all that, believe me, I've heard, I think all of it, and so have other people that are out here that have come to learn the Torah is true, and it's still for today. It is not done away. God never changed it. He never changed the Sabbath. He did make a change of the priesthood, but that was for his own purposes and because of sin and idolatry and, other things. That's, again, another discussion. He did away with the temple. He did away with the priesthood and scattered his people, the kingdom of Judah, or the Jewish people, throughout the world. And he's been, in the last 70 years, bringing some of them back more and more. But that's not all. Far from the full ingathering of God's people. Okay, so anyhow, just this one little comment by, I think it's Acts 2:21 is the name on the channel. And, just about how Yehovah is restoring his calendar. It got me thinking, and then I thought I wanted to share that with whoever might tune in. But he's truly restoring his ways. The calendar is one piece of it, and I think it's because he's preparing his people to enter into the millennial kingdom. Will we all be risen from the dead to go into it? I don't know. That's one of those things I wonder about sometimes, because it sounds like some horrible things are coming on this earth. But, put your trust in God. Yeshua is Lord. He is God's Messiah. And absolutely just hang on to him and don't let go, because he'll never reject you if you hang on to him. But he did say, and don't forget this, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And I fully believe he was referring to the commandments of God, because he and the Father are one. They're united, same commandments, So anyhow, just something I want to share. Yehovah bless you and keep you. Shalom.